Herzlich willkommen im Schlossmuseum der Oberösterreichischen Landeskultur GmbH zum heutigen Artist Talk with Margaret und Christine Wertheim, zwei Künstlerinnen und Wissenschaftlerinnen. Und wir möchten heute aus diesem Anlass, eben der gestrigen Eröffnung des größten österreichischen Korallenriffs, einen Artist Talk machen, aber eben auch bei uns im Haus kontextualisieren. Deswegen sind auch die Kolleginnen da, eben die Julia Wöger, eine Paläontologin und eine Meeresbiologin, die sich spezialisiert hat und die uns auch sozusagen den Hintergrund quasi aus unserer Säule Natur vermitteln wird. Natur deshalb, weil auch Natur die Sammlung ist, mit der die Ausstellung in Dialog tritt. Also weil sie schlicht auch in dieser Ebene stattfindet, weil es hier sozusagen auch bei uns im Haus ein Aquarium gibt, weil es neueste Funde gibt, die jetzt auch ausgestellt worden sind anlässlich dieses Projekts. Weiters möchte ich Ihnen vorstellen die Petra Fohringer, Künstlerin und Projektmanagerin dieser Ausstellung, dieses Projekts, die uns noch mehr zu dem Produktionsprozess erzählen wird, wie das jetzt tatsächlich auch entstanden ist in Zusammenarbeit mit den Künstlerinnen. Dann möchte ich vorstellen Gabriele Kainberger aus dem Kulturvermittlungsteam, die treibende Kraft und der Motor dahinter ist, dass wir eben 2000 Teilnehmerinnen an diesem Projekt gewonnen haben, dass es so viel Interesse gegeben hat und vor allem auch sehr spezifische Formate entwickelt, eben wie ein Häkelcafé, das sich dann auch in ganz Oberösterreich ausgedehnt hat. Doch nun zu unseren beiden Ehrengästen und wir werden dann auch ins Englische switchen. Christine Wertheim ist eine Künstlerin, eine Literatin, eine Performance-Künstlerin. Sie hat über 20 Jahre in London gelebt und sie ist auch eine Lehrende. Sie hat einen PhD für Literatur und sie ist jetzt auch noch ein Staff-Member der CalArts, einer sehr wichtigen Kunstuniversität in Amerika, und sie lebt in Los Angeles inzwischen, genauso eben wie Margaret Wertheim lebt in Los Angeles. Beide sind eigentlich aus Australien, kennen eben auch aus Queensland, kennen das Great Barrier Reef seit ihrer Kindheit und Jugend. Und Margaret Wertheim ist eine preisgekrönte Journalistin, Wissensvermittlerin, aber auch speziell eine Vermittlerin für wissenschaftliche und vor allem mathematische Inhalte für Mädchen und Frauen. Welcome, dear all. I would like to start with Julia Wöger. She is also part of the art mediation team, or was part of the art mediation team, and is doing now her PhD at the University of Vienna, so at the alma mater of Wien. And she will introduce us and tell us more about the background of the project. Just wait until the video starts because I think it's gonna take some.
Is this being recorded visually or only auditorily?
Visually.
Oh, right. And how far? Yeah, how far down is it?
That's just a microphone, and the camera is.
Oh, I see. Sorry, did I just get rid of?
I think I have to press.
Water.
Yes, once and then I hope the video will start. Yeah. So here. You see a little clip of plate tectonics, and how, or at least you should see it. Well, yeah, it's been working before, but now, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. We try again. You try click
again.
On the thingy itself. It should start, hopefully. Yes. Yeah. It's just because it's frozen, and then it stops because this is a citation. It's from Christopher Scottese, also very famous geologist who is
doing these reconstructions. Because many people might ask, like, why Upper Austria? What does this coral reef have to do with Upper Austria? Since we do not have access to the sea or coral reefs here. But the thing is, this was not always the case. In former times, we did have access to the sea. So many of the Earth's crust element that we now call Upper Austria are actually made up of marine deposits. If you think of the calcareous Alps, for example, but many other deposits as well. So what we call primeval seas, I think it was called in the press memo, or this Urmeer that covered large parts of the country, was the Molasses Sea, is what it's called, or paleontologists call it Parathetis. Here you see the deposition, not the formation, but the deposition of the sediments that actually make up the Alps in this bay. That's
Julia, can I ask, are we making Austria here or the whole world?
This is the whole world, but I will press stop at
That's okay.
Okay, maybe take the computer and try, to stop it.
Oh, I can see it. There you go.
So
there you go.
you cannot see the map pointer, but if I stop here, so this little, you can already kind of see what's Europe, and you see that above the Mediterranean there is another water body, and this is the so-called Parathetis. And this,
that's a sea.
Sorry, can I get up?
I have
So
I have better maps.
Are you saying
No, up.
this?
No,
Yes,
up,
this.
Or that bit, there.
No,
up,
the
up.
one to the left, more to
This
the left,
one?
like above
There.
Italy. Yeah,
That's the ancient sea?
that's the ancient sea that
Oh, sorry.
I was talking about.
In water.
But I will just, we have the Mediterranean and the Indian, this is all just forming, so you can see that Africa is still moving upwards. I mean, it is still, and I will just press again, and so this is continuing, and you can see that the water body that I was talking about disappeared, and you have the formation of, and this is what it looks like in present day. But if I go to the next slide, then maybe it becomes a little bit clearer. So this is, the red dot on this picture is actually Rheinbach, which is a smaller village here in Upper Austria, but it's close enough to Linz. So you can see that about 15 million, this sea existed up until 15 million years approximately. And so Linz was exactly on the shoreline. Where we are now, maybe we would have been above water, but I'm not quite sure actually. Most of where the city of Linz is now was covered by the sea.
Could you, because I'm having difficulty reading, could you point out where Austria is?
Well, Austria is not yet how it is, and where it is.
That's where Linz is.
That's
The red dot is Linz.
the red dot.
No, she said it was somewhere else.
No, but only really slightly, like 70
Right.
kilometers at this
Right. Oh, right.
magnification
Okay,
would
fine,
not be
fine,
allowed,
okay.
right?
So
I have,
So 50 million years ago.
this is
Austria
another,
underwater.
Right.
this is another picture from this Parathetis Sea, what it
Right.
used to look like. And we have actually many sediments on the northern hills of Linz. For example, this famous sandpit of Plesching, where hobbyists still go now to dig up shark teeth, fossil shark teeth. At the time, so about, like, this is earlier, 25 million years, but at 50 million years, we still had like subtropical conditions here in Linz. So you will find fossils like sharks or dolphins or sea cows, rays, many different other species of fish, and of course also coral. But because it was the shoreline, the water energy was very high, so the preservation of the fossils is not that good, and it's hard to identify the different species of corals. But I think up to now it's about 10 or 8 different species that have been identified. So,
But there would have been a fully formed coral reef with lots of many different species, you think?
Well, probably not a fully formed reef, more patchier reefs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be my guess. But I mean, haven't that. So this is another picture of, you can see the Bay of Linz. Yeah, so it used to be like a little bay where the star to the right is next to Eferding, and the one on the very right, that's this bay, that's where Linz is. And so because the fossils here on the fossil corals from Plesching, for example, are not so well preserved, but we have very well preserved corals also, that like the ones that were found in Eferding, I think it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, it was kind of a sensation, right?
Yeah, because they're not only a bit older, but also come from sediments of much deeper water, so much finer sediments, and the preservation is much better.
And does that mean they are older or younger?
Older.
Right.
They are older, and they lived in much deeper water. This picture, so they have not been, the species has not been identified, but they belong to the genus Madrepora. And this is a type of coral that can also, some of the species live in quite in high depths.
Does that mean they were very cold?
Well, they must have been adapted to colder waters. Yeah. Well, since we don't know the species, it's not clear whether this special, but it's clear that it lived in deeper waters because of the sediments that we find them in. I mean, it might also have fallen down. That's the thing with paleontology. If you find something at a certain place, it doesn't always mean that it has been there all of the time. So
that's interesting. So how do you know?
Well, you have to look for traces of transportation in the fossils. It's tricky sometimes. You can always date the stuff and.
Why can't we have a conversation?
We can have. Maybe it would be good to
show the presentation and then we have the conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
So this would be a live example of what Madrepora looks like, or Madrepora oculata. And the rest of my pictures is only coral reef pictures, since you guys have these beautiful, colorful pictures. I didn't want to show any more fossils. I tried to stick to the live corals. Coral reefs are super important habitats because while they only make up 1% of the ocean floor, they host about 25% of species. So they are a very, very important habitat. They are the not nurseries for many, many different species, but also host them their entire lives. Here we see like a young barracuda. I'm sorry. The next, sorry. I'm trying to match what I wanted to say. So they build these skeletons that build reefs. Some corals, not all corals do this, but they are able to do this because they have zooxanthellae, so symbiotic organisms in their tissues that photosynthesize and that provide the corals with nutrients. And this enables them to grow a lot faster and build these amazing structures that we then later see. But because they have this skeleton or these zooxanthellae, they're also, as you already have said many, many times, extremely susceptible to climate change and to warming temperatures, because when temperatures rise, the zooxanthellae become a problem for the corals, so the corals expel their zooxanthellae rising temperatures are not the only cause why corals do this, but one of the main causes why they expel their symbionts. If this temperature does not continue for a very long time, sometimes corals are able to regain their symbionts or regrow their symbionts and become healthy again. But if the higher temperatures, where the temperatures stay high for a longer time, then the corals die. And this is when we see these white patches of reef that some people think are very pretty, but actually it means that the corals have died. But these warming temperatures are not the only problem the corals face. As we emit more and more CO2 into the atmosphere, this CO2 also becomes dissolved in the waters of the oceans, and it means it turns the oceans more acidic. And this ocean acidification is a problem for not only corals, but many species that have exterior skeletons made of calcium carbonate. And because the calcium carbonate is dissolved, and it becomes increasingly difficult for those species to build their skeletons. So this is also why projects like this one are so important to raise the awareness for this coral bleachings. I think we all talk about climate change a lot, but when we talk about this abstract thing of climate change, many people forget the direct impacts that it has on certain ecosystems, and also how important these ecosystems are for us as humans. Yeah, and yesterday only there was a talk of a colleague of mine from the Institute of Paläontology at the University of Vienna, and he was talking about a mass bleaching event at the Red Sea this year, which is very dramatic because the corals in the Red Sea have so far been considered the corals the most resilient to heat differences. And if you are interested in watching it, you can still watch it online if you go to the homepage of the Institute. Yeah, so.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julia Wöger. Are there already some comments from your side?
I had some questions, but no.
Yes, please.
I forgot my question. In that early video where you were showing the movement of all the land above water and how it has changed so much over time and where it is today, are there other regions of the earth like Austria where, because of these massive changes, there are ancient coral reefs in mountains?
Yeah, a lot of them, actually. So because as a general rule, this is a very general statement, and maybe not all paleontologists will agree, but as a rule, if you have water, you have sedimentation that stays there, so there is a buildup of sediment, and if the water goes away, then you have erosion, so the sediments are taken away again. And what we find now is mostly, not only, but mostly marine sediments, because there's so much sedimentation going on in the oceans and in the water.
But the implication is that then everywhere in the world was somewhere that's above land now, above water now, or land was once underwater. So everywhere's got sedimented corals, or is it only some places?
No, that's unfortunately not quite true, because you also have parts that are mountains now that have, like, we're underneath the what we call the crust today, that are like, because the mountains that were there that built this shoreline are actually much, much older. The Bohemian Massif is like the oldest rocks that we have in Austria, and it used to be the foundation of an old mountain area where the mountains have been eroded, and now you have the granite, so these original plutonic rocks that are much higher than they used to be. They used to be for thousands of kilometers below, and now they're above.
But they were never underwater.
No, well, no, I don't think so.
Right.
Not all land masses have been underwater
Right.
at some point. Like not everywhere, but in many places. Like as you can see, the Earth's face changed a lot.
Mm.
And it's not always so easy to say, this point was Austria, because of this change. If you were to actually make circles at all the different places where Austria used to be, you would have multiple circles, right? Because it was squished together at one point or another, and now it's on the same spot, but it did not always used to be like that. And that's the case for many other regions as well. So geology is kind of a bit hard to wrap your head around because it's like three-dimensional, and then the time also, it's hard. I think it doesn't come so naturally.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Petra Fohringer now to tell us a bit about how the project was evolved and what the context here in the Castle Museum is. So, and also really the production and the collaboration. As Christine and Margaret just had a long talk, a guided tour, so we take care a bit.
I'll give you the computer to put on the next thing.
Yeah.
Yes, I was asked by our art director, Mr. Weidinger, I think last year at the end of October, if I could manage this project together with Genoveva who's the curator. And at first I thought it will be business as usual, like ordinary exhibition. I really soon recognized after my first talks with Margaret and Christine that this will be a very, very special, intense and interesting project, and that our team also will have to work close together with the artists to develop this exhibition, and especially to develop the Austrian Satellite Reef. And I want to say thank you again to Christine and Margaret, because they were thinking so much about what, for example, what colors we can use, what backgrounds might be necessary. They did some research about Austria and Upper Austria. And they also were always listening to what we wanted to say and developed together with us. And that's also a very special thing, because sometimes artists just say, I want this, and they don't want to work together. And this was really, really great that we could work that good together and to get a great job. Yes, the first steps, as I said, was we had some talks, and then I soon was looking for some colleagues to build up a little bigger team to develop everything. Gabi stepped in, I'm not sure, I think in January?
I think we had the first meeting. Yeah.
And soon afterwards, we together had the first meeting with Christine and Margaret. The next steps were decide how we could spread all this information. Can we get many people to join us working on this Austrian Satellite Reef, and to spread the information about what colors we want to use or we would prefer, and therefore I think we got a quite good strategy together with our marketing institution, and it seems like over 2,000 people joined us, so it seems it worked really fine, everything. And the first decisions, I have got these colors here, because on this colors you can see what colors we wanted to use. It was gold and black for a Goldhauben sujet, and blue and white for the cross stitch. And there's also some red in here. Blue and white, sorry, for blueprint, and red and white for cross stitch. So it was really, really important for us. And also Christine pointed this out, that we use the techniques also that are very important for Upper Austria and very common for Upper Austria. Yeah, this and then Gabi also took over, and I think at this point a very intense time for Gabi started, with very, very many people meetings and many experiences. And I think, I don't know if you, Gabi, should you take over now, or should I tell something about building up the reef?
Maybe, yes, this would be interesting. How is a coral reef built up? What is the structure? What is it? How can I do it myself?
Yeah, we had a little workshop.
The Austrian invention.
Christine was here in Austria for 1 week in the summer, and she showed us how to build a coral reef, a satellite reef, and she was a good teacher. And at first there weren't that much corals in here, and we started in this room with the first reef. We built up. We had to design first how should this look like, the ground, cut it out the plate, and then together with our production team, of course, we built like these poles and arms of the coral reefs. They're made out of sonotubes, for example. We use this, and also lots of wire is used. If you have a look at this, these were our workshops. Just like 2 or 3 weeks before the opening, we had lots of people joining us also for building up. At the moment, you just see over there. You can see like the construction a bit. What's underneath all this mass of corals.
That's a perfect picture.
That's a perfect picture. You can see a tube, for example, and this black one is a bigger one, a sonotube. Yeah, and we also had, of course, to decide how it should look like with the colors. Should we put like one piece of colors, light blue, for example, and where to get dark, where to put some other colors into it. And these were the hardest decisions. Really, what colors can I use, should be used, and what colors disturb each other, what colors provide from each other.
Ja, danke vielmals. Thank you, Petra. Gabi, I would like to ask you to take over, or not only as the one who was taking care for all the participants of the project, but also as someone who really knows the Castle Museum very well. And there are so many references, as Christine and Margaret Wertheim had only time in the very last days to see something, and there are so many references not only in the natural history collection and presentation, but also in our folk art and collection, and also on display. So what kind of references do you see in cultural history? Before, please talk about the participation project.
Well, when it comes like to like the Schlossmuseum. The Schlossmuseum is like a big museum where you have loads of different sections. Like there's a nature exhibition, a technical exhibition, folk art exhibition. And as in your projects, it's always very, very important to integrate women's knowledge, craftsmanship, and art, folk art, textile art, and we have an exhibition where actually all this, like the blueprinting and the Red Cross stitching and the very traditional hats women produce here, where we took the gold and black color scheme off, was for many, many years exhibited and presented here in the museum. So actually it's a quite interesting and fascinating point that now this all is referred to and taking into art and as well maybe modernized and taken care of and spoken of. Yeah, that's a nice thing. Yeah, and of course what the next point is, what you say, is that we integrated thousands of people who actually contributed to these coral reefs, and most of them were women. And all this work they do and the knowledge they have, that is now actually on display, and it's in honor of all these 2,000 individual, mostly women, who made this project actually happening and possible. So that's a great collaborative thing. Yeah. And as this is going to be on YouTube, this talk, so we talk about internet, but what was as well very, very important to this project was that it needed a physical place, where people can actually meet and communicate, and creativeness actually happened because people physically did something, met in a real analog place. Yeah, so that was something very, very, very important to the whole project. That you understand as well knowledge or things about mathematics or things about corals by physically doing things. That's what I found very, very interesting in the whole project.
Thank you very much, Gabi, and also for all your work. And I would like to hand over to Christine to tell us more about the pieces you brought with you.
Well, one of the things that I have found very interesting about this project, because as Gabriele said, in order to curate the pieces into coral reefs of whatever structure, you have to physically handle them. Like, as Petra said, you have to decide what's the basic colours. So, as we've all said, there's the red and white, there's the blue and white, and there's the black and gold. But even when you're choosing red and white or blue, even if you're just choosing red and white, and Petra knows because Petra did most of the curating of the red and white, it's like, okay, well, we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of red and white pieces, but which ones shall I put next to each other, because some look good and some don't. Oh, look, there's the red and white reefs. So, it is like one of the analogies Margaret and I say, it's like there's two phases of the project. One is the people making the corals, and so you put out a call and ask people to send you corals. But then you've got, I think we probably have at least 30,000, possibly 40,000 here. And then you've got to turn them into three-dimensional painted sculptures. And how do you do that? It's not just immediately obvious how that happens. And there's an enormous amount of decision-making. And it's like if you ask the people of Austria or Upper Austria to make little pots of paint and send it to you, and then you have to paint a picture and possibly a three-dimensional picture. And it's one thing to have all the paint. It's another thing to decide what kind of picture you want to make, how big it is, what colours you're going to use, which colours are going to go next to each other. And so in order to do that, you have to make some decisions, and then you have to rifle through all the corals and go, okay, this section is going to be neon. And then you have to rifle through the corals and find all the neon ones. And so one of the phases is sorting the corals into different piles. And over time they get a bit blurred because everybody's fiddling with them. But roughly you can see in this room they're sort of semi in their colours. But for me, one of the interesting things about this project has been that Gabriele has reached out not just to the general populace, but also to many different kinds of institutions, schools, I think primary schools and high schools, and also institutions for people with various forms of, I don't know what the right technical terms are in here. People with various capacities who are living in institutions or have to spend a lot of time in institutions. And Gabriele has reached out to many of these places, and many of these people have contributed to the project. And there's once you start looking through the work, you begin to recognise the signature of certain people. And there's this person here, whose name we don't know. It's a woman, like as Gabriele said. She has made hundreds of pieces, and I can recognise, if I pick up a piece, I know it's her. And one of the first, could you hand me that? One of the first pieces that she made, because it was here the first time I arrived, is this, and we still haven't figured out what we're going to do with it, but I think in some way it should be looped around the walls of something and then maybe other things hanging off it. But, you know, I don't know, possibly 30 metres long, and it's just fantastic. It's like a sea snake, and it's just fantastic. But she also made that piece, that big piece is not hers, but she made a lot of very big pieces like that, and they've been incorporated into all the Austrian reefs. They're just everywhere. This woman is some kind of outsider genius. But then there are also other people who have made things like this, and Gabriele, and we've never seen this before. And Gabriele explained to me, that one woman started it, and apparently it's a special kind of plant that's deliberately bred. It's not a natural plant to anywhere, not even to Austria, but nurseries sell it here for gardens, and it grows. And what's its name, Gabriele?
Quackenzieherhase.
So it's corkscrew vine. And one woman bought in some pieces like this where she crocheted around the corkscrew vine, and then she bought in a whole lot of it because she obviously grows it in her garden, into one of the cafes. And other people started taking it away, and then they would bring it back a month later, crocheted around. So there's a lot of this vine or wood with crochet. We've never seen this because when we have structures like this, they've got man-made wire in them. But there's a lot of this vine all over all the reefs, and it's absolutely unique to the Austrian reef. And I just think they're just beautiful, beautiful objects. And then this piece is also from someone who is living in a home, and they've just got this extraordinary, you know, it's a reef all by itself. They've just got this extraordinary quality that, you know, if it was me, I'd just put what we call a wire foot up it and just stand it like that as an object in its own right. And my personal favourite art, as my students are always horrified to learn, is what is called outsider art or art groups, which is made by people who are not in the art world. They're people who develop a creative practice without having any necessary relationship to the official art world. Some of them live in institutions and some of them don't. They're just, out there in the world. And they make these extraordinary things that look nothing like art. And when I say this because I teach in an art school, when I say this to my students, they go, "Oh, you can't say that, you can't say that." And I said, I think they're in a category that's higher than art. To me, they're not art in the sense of the institution of the art world. They are something different. If you want to call it art, that's okay by me, but you must recognise that everything that motivates these is completely different to what motivates people who are call themselves practicing artists. It doesn't mean they're less creative. In fact, I think they're more creative. But I believe they're a different species of object, and I find them extraordinary. And there's a lot of them in Austria because Gabriele reached out to a number of these places. And there should be a mini exhibition of these things by themselves. And, what I find extraordinary is that, Austria is actually the home of, Austria has this tradition since the late 19th century of valorising these kind of objects, because a number of people in the late 19th, early 20th century, in the sort of beginnings of the psychiatric profession, found people who, because they were psychiatrists, they were dealing with, and they found them making things, and then they recognised that they were extraordinary and they kept them and started this tradition of so-called art brut because they made these collections. And one of them is a place called Gugging, which is just outside Vienna, and another, the most famous collection is a collection by a man called Prinzhorn, who is Austrian. So Austria has this long tradition of taking care of people with other abilities and valorising what they do. And I'm just so thrilled that they finally made it into the Reef. Really, for me, it's my favourite kind of art.
I mean, you gave a lot of, you enabled people who are usually not in these high art categories to have their names in their project. So, and Margaret, can you tell us a bit about how the process was establishing this, the Coral Reef project 18 years ago? Mm-hmm. How this developed, especially to give not only a name but also a voice to a lot of female artists or females who did a lot of creative process?
When we started the project in 2005, soon after Chrissy and I were just originally making these corals in our living room, and we had the idea that it would be nice to get some people to join us. And so I put a notice up on our website for our little organisation, the Institute for Figuring, saying we're making this coral reef with crochet and it involves mathematics and climate change, and we'd love anyone to participate. And what was astonishing to us is over the next few months, people just started sending us packages from random places. There was a woman, Helen Bernasconi, who was a former computer programmer who had retired from computer programming to a sheep farm in the middle of Australia. And she was raising her sheep, shearing the sheep, spinning the yarn, dyeing the yarn. And she saw our project, and really, because she was a computer scientist, she had a good aptitude for mathematics. So she started doing little drawings and calculating structures that she could make and exactly how much yarn she would need of each colour to dye to produce an exact structure. And she just started sending us things in the mail. Mm-hmm. And then there was another woman who we think is our star contributor, a woman called Evelyn Harden, who had been was a homemaker in Dallas, Texas. And Evelyn, I don't even know how Evelyn found out about the project. I think she saw it online. but she had left high school at 16 because she was pregnant with her first child, and she had never had any education beyond, not even finishing high school. And she's just this force of nature who, like these people, she could sort of do these wild things. And sometimes she'd send us really fine little things made very delicately. And then she'd send us these big flobbery masses of finger crocheted out of plastic with rubbish incorporated into them. And we would just started getting these things they were all women, randomly from around the world. And sometimes they'd come with these amazing little notes or a box saying, "What do you want to know about me?" Which Evelyn had sent one. And we had no idea who would participate, and we could never have imagined this collection of people there was someone from Romania, there was someone from, England, there was, people from random places in America. And one of the things that we've come to love about this project is that we've had people all over the world, 99.99% women, but you have no idea who you're going to get. It's like, it's truly, you have no idea who's going to come to the party. But, and you also have no idea of who is going to be amazingly great at it. Now, I say that with sort of slight hesitation because everybody who participates is great, but there's no question that some people get far more involved. Some people produce hundreds of corals, thousands of corals. Some people, produce corals which they literally spend hundreds or even 1,000 hours on a single coral. But the thing that we love about this is that we didn't put any parameters on it. Anyone could contribute, and most of the people who've contributed are women who would never be shown in the professional art world. And I do consider it, the greatest thing that I think I've done in this project is got Evelyn Harden, who is a Dallas, Texas housewife who never finished school, whose highest job was working in a magnet factory. And we've got Evelyn exhibited in the Venice Biennale and the Smithsonian Institution. And I think most artists would kill to have exhibits both in the Venice Biennale and in the Smithsonian. And we can say that we have got housewives into that situation.
So your project is very much also based on kind of a feministic practice. So you both were involved also in theory about that, not only about space and mathematics, but also in theory as you were teaching and writing about this. So that we have this kind of feministic praxis in this really largest participatory art project of the world, right?
As far as we know, yes.
As far as we know.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? Yes, I'll just say a few words about that. There's an American artist whose name is Miela Lederman Ukeles, and in 1969 she was participating in the art world in America, in New York, and at that time the art world was extremely sexist, and women were basically just not considered artists and ignored when they went to openings and things. Nobody took any interest in their art. And then she got pregnant, and she writes about this fact that one night when she was pregnant, she went to an opening and people just behaved as if she was invisible. And the idea was that the categories of mother and artist are absolutely incompatible. It's like you cannot be an insect and a mammal at the same time. You're either an insect or you're a mammal. It's not possible to be a mother and an artist. And she was so outraged that she came home and she hand-typed this statement on 4 pages. It's very short, you can read it. It used to be on the internet, but now obviously she's taken it down because, like all these people like this, she never made any money and she's finally trying to monetize her work, so she's taken it down. But before takedown, I got a copy of it and I used to talk about it in my classes. It's this 4-page document called the Maintenance Art Manifesto, and she divides the world's labour into 2 classifications. One is what she calls development art, which is making and creating, and the other is what she calls development work and maintenance work. So development work is making things and producing things, and maintenance work is basically dusting it and keeping it safe and making sure it's nice and polished and doesn't fall off its perch. And as she rightly says, you know, on the whole, these 2 categories of labour are divided along gender lines in our society. That's not exclusively true, but to some degree anyway. So she decided, and this was the height of the conceptual art era, she decided, well, I'm just going to designate, she said, you know, I spend all my time, she had small children and she was pregnant, I spend all my time dusting, cleaning, nurturing, looking after other people, and sometimes I'm able to make art. And she said, now I'm just going to declare all my maintenance labour to be art, and I'm going to do it as artworks. And she had this proposition that she was going to clean an art gallery, and that was going to be her artwork. It took her 7 years to convince any art gallery to let her do it. And she ultimately did it, and it took her something like 12 days to clean the art gallery. And she every time she did a room or a section, it would be designated as an artwork so nobody could go in it. So the gallery people hated her because, like, for instance, when she was cleaning the front steps, nobody could go into the art gallery because they couldn't get in. So there's very little documentation of this work. And then after that, she basically became the official unpaid artist in residence to the New York Department of Sanitation, which is the department of the New York City Council that takes care of trash. And she has been since 1970-something the official unpaid artist in residence, and all of her work is with the people that clean up our trash. And her attitude, her motivation is to visibilise the labour and the people who make our cities livable in, but who are normally invisibilised. And I think our work fits into this category of maintenance art because it's the techniques, i.e. crochet and to some degree knitting, are techniques that are used in making the home nice and in covering people's bodies in clothes. So it's maintaining the domestic environment and the place where we all go to rest after work and to relax. And that's what these crafts are associated with, nurturing and caring and looking after people. And they're not seen as creations in their own right. They're seen as maintaining something else that might be creative, but not themselves directly creative. So I like to say this is maintenance art.
Thank you very much. Margaret, I would like to ask you to tell us a bit about the background of mathematics in the projects.
So in the project, this is a good demonstration. So I've got this beautiful snake around me. I'll just get... This is amazing. I haven't seen it before. What an incredible thing. So this is a good demonstration to understand the mathematics. So one of the inspirations for the project was when we learned that there's the frilly curly surfaces that you see in corals are a kind of geometry, the shapes of them are a kind of geometry called hyperbolic geometry, which is an alternative to the Euclidean geometry we learn at school. So there are 3 kinds of geometry, it turns out. There's the flat one, which is what we learn at school, and then there's spherical geometry, which is this, like if you think about a beach ball or the surface of the earth. And so this one is flat, Euclidean. Spherical geometry is clearly curved, and mathematicians say it's positive curvature. So if you can have positive curvature, is it possible that you could have negative curvature? And it turns out there is a mathematical structure that's negative curvature, and it's what the lettuce leaf looks like, where it sort of starts off flat at the stalk and then gets more and more frilly. And corals and many marine reef organisms that have these curly crenellated forms are also hyperbolic structures. And there was a mathematician, Dr. Diana Taimina at Cornell University, who in the 1997 realized that you could make models of these hyperbolic surfaces with crochet. And because mathematicians didn't know how to make models of them, they understood them through equations and theory, but they didn't know how to make physical models of them. And she said, oh, you know what, boys, we can do it with crochet. And she was making mathematically perfect ones to use in her teaching courses at Cornell. And we learned about her and started doing the mathematically perfect ones. But there's only so much variety you can get if you do mathematically perfect ones. And Christine was the one that after a little while, she said, you know, I'm sick of doing mathematically perfect ones, I'm going to branch out. And so she brought home this big bag of the pink fluffy yarns and sparked yarns and green, you know, spiky yarns. And she said, I'm deviating. And so she started doing not ones that were aberrant, you didn't follow the exact mathematical formula. And because they were wonky and off kilter, they stopped looking like mathematical models and they started to look organic. And we had a little cluster of them sitting on our table and we realized, oh, they don't look like mathematical models anymore. They look like living things, particularly they look like coral reefs. And that's because coral reefs are actually making these mathematical things. But nature never makes things, or very rarely makes things mathematically perfectly. So a lot of things in nature are mathematical, but they're usually not perfectly mathematical. So one good example is a sphere is a mathematically perfect shape. There's very few real spheres in nature, but there are lots of wonky spheres, like an egg that's bigger at one end and smaller at one end, or a sea urchin's, which is like a flattened sphere. And so Chrissy started experimenting with making wonky hyperbolics, and that's what basically nature is doing. So something like a lettuce leaf or any coral, which is a curly, frilly coral, is not a perfectly mathematical hyperbolic. It'll be more curly over here and less curly over here. So, but that's what makes it look like a living thing. So, you know, the real innovation, or from a mathematical perspective, the innovation of this project is that we stopped following the perfect mathematical formula Dr. Dana Taimina had invented, and we started going wild and introducing, as it were, deviations and aberrancy. So Chrissy likes to say, you know, we started querying the code. Because, you know, crochet is a code.
Yes.
You can write crochet patterns out as a code. And the code for the perfect hyperbolic is just a very simple code, and it's not very interesting. But once you start putting deviations in, the code gets much more complex. So it's an analogy to the DNA code that underlies life. So all of life has a DNA code that could be written out. And as time goes on, you start with the simple cells, and then you get much more complicated codes, and you get peacocks and giraffes. And our project is like that. The code gets more and more complex and more diverse, and then you get things like this lady. Yeah. You could probably write a pattern out for all of that, but
can I just say, the code is incredibly simple for those who don't know it. It's simply crochet X stitches and then increase. So crochet 3 stitches and increase, do another 3 and increase, like put 2 stitches in one, or you can do 5 increases in every stitch. So the more you increase, the faster it will get curly. The slower you increase, the less you increase, the longer it takes to get curly. But it's simply X stitches and increase.
That's for the mathematically perfect one.
Yeah, and the deviation is simply, oh, well, you know,
anything.
It's vaguely 5, you know. Sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's only 3, you know, because I was watching, when we started, we were watching Xena Warrior Princess, and I like to follow the plot. I like Xena Warrior Princess. So, you know, I can't watch television and be exactly, you know, it's exactly 6. My fingers roughly know that it's 6, but, you know, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it was an incredible, interesting talks as we all kind of participated and shared with different expertise and interests and backgrounds. And I think in that way we can really understand how complex this project is. I mean, it's looking on an aesthetic, philosophical way extremely ordinary, beautiful. And we are really, it's like this, in philosophy we call it Erhabenheit. So that we are really astonished, especially about phenomena which are existing in nature. Mm-hmm. And it's beyond beauty, it's really touching us. So it's a spirit, Erhabenheit. Mm. So it's a philosophy. Graceful, maybe, yeah.
Sublime is the word.
Sublime, yeah. I think so, yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you especially Christine and Margaret for your incredible input, which enabled us to do together with you this amazing project and to have this very interesting context in nature and also in cultural history in this Universal Museum of the Castle Museum of Upper Austria.
And we would like to thank you all. It's really been amazing. A lovely experience, and I know sometimes there's been challenges, but for us it's been a really amazing experience, and we couldn't have done it without you guys. It's been really a pleasure.
Without you women.
That's true, without you girls. Without you girls.
Okay.
Yes, I must, because you guys, yes. Thank you very much. It's
Thank
really
you.
been lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So now we will be able to also free the portiers, so the team who is waiting for us.
Oh, are they waiting for us to leave?
Yeah. Oh,